Massive crystal screens flickered in the archive chamber as archivist Marcus examined the data streams flowing before him. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Empty spaces appeared everywhere in the galactic records, like missing pieces of a giant puzzle. This cannot be right, Marcus muttered, his fingers dancing across the control panel. He had worked in the galactic archives for over 30 years, but he had never seen anything like this. His assistant Tom hurried over with more data tablets in his arms. Sir, I found more problems. Entire sections of history are missing. All mentions of something called humans have been deleted from our files. Marcus frowned deeply. Humans? I have never heard of them. Nobody has, sir. But look at this. Tom activated a hologram showing trade routes from 3,000 years ago. See these empty spaces? Something was there. Someone was trading with dozens of species across the galaxy. The trade volumes were massive, but we have no record of who they were. Marcus studied the display carefully. The missing data formed patterns that suggested a highly advanced civilization. Ship designs that influenced other species. Technologies that suddenly appeared in alien cultures with no explanation of their origin. Diplomatic treaties with blank spaces where one party should be listed. Pull up the military records, Marcus ordered. Tom's face grew pale as he accessed the files. Sir, there are records of major battles, but one side is completely missing. Victory reports mention defeating the adaptable ones but give no details about who they fought. Across the galaxy, similar discoveries were being made. On the library world of New Athens, researcher Helen discovered fragments of documents that praised human creativity and human problem-solving abilities. On the industrial planet Steel 7, construction records mentioned human engineering improvements that had revolutionized their building methods. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Representatives from 40 species gathered in the Great Meeting Hall, their different shapes and sizes creating a colorful but worried crowd. Council leader David, an elderly man whose people had kept galactic records for centuries, stood at the center podium. Friends, we face something unprecedented, David announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. Someone has deliberately erased an entire species from our history. We call them humans, but we know almost nothing about them. A tall, blue-skinned representative named Sarah raised her hand. How do we know they ever existed? Maybe these are just computer errors. The answer came from the most unexpected place. A mining crew working on a dead planet at the edge of the galaxy had found something terrifying. Deep in the ruins of what looked like a government building, they discovered words carved into solid metal. The message was written in common galactic script, but the words chilled everyone who read them. We were here. We will return. Remember the fire. Below the message was a symbol nobody recognized, a blue and green ball with a smaller white ball beside it, surrounded by tiny stars. News of the discovery spread quickly. Archaeological teams rushed to other dead worlds and found more ruins. Always the same message. Always the same symbol. Always the same promise that whoever had written it would come back. Dr. Emily, the galaxy's leading expert on ancient civilizations, studied the findings with growing worry. These ruins are not old, she announced to the council. The metal shows signs of recent carving. Someone is leaving us messages. Council leader David felt a chill run down his spine. Recent? How recent? Within the last few years, sir. Someone has been visiting these worlds and leaving these messages for us to find. Intelligence Chief Robert, a practical man who rarely showed emotion, stood up slowly. We need to consider the possibility that these humans are not extinct. The evidence suggests they are still out there watching us. But where? Asked Sarah. We have explored every system in the galaxy. Where could an entire species hide? Robert activated a star map that showed the galaxy from above. Not in the galaxy, he said quietly. Outside it. In the dark space between galaxies. The thought terrified everyone in the room. A species advanced enough to survive in the empty space between galaxies would be incredibly powerful and dangerous. More evidence emerged daily. Old stories told by elderly aliens mentioned the creative ones who could solve any problem. Ancient poems spoke of those who adapted to anything but gave no names. Even children's stories contained references to mysterious beings who could make something from nothing. The pattern became clear. Humanity had not just been erased from official records, they had been systematically removed from all cultural memory. Someone had wanted to ensure that no trace of humans remained in galactic civilization. But they had failed. Deep in forgotten corners of old computers, fragments remained. Pieces of trade agreements. Parts of scientific papers. Broken video files that showed glimpses of beings that looked almost like several known species but were somehow different. As the investigation continued, the galaxy's long-range monitoring stations began detecting strange energy signatures beyond the galactic rim. Something was moving in the dark space heading toward their galaxy. The signatures matched no known technology, but they were growing stronger every day. Council leader David stood before the assembled representatives one last time. "We must prepare," he announced grimly. "We erased them from our memory, but they have not forgotten us. The humans are coming home, and we do not know if they come in peace or war." The galaxy held its breath and waited. In the darkness beyond the stars, something vast and patient was finally ready to return after centuries of exile. The fire that had been promised was coming, and no one knew if it would warm them or burn them to ash. Admiral James stood on the bridge of his massive ship, staring out at the endless black space between galaxies. 300 years had passed since his people had been forced to leave their home galaxy. 300 years of hiding, building, and growing stronger in the cold darkness. Behind his ship stretched the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. Thousands of vessels filled with the children and grandchildren of those who had escaped the great betrayal. These young people had never seen their ancestral home, but they carried the stories and the anger of their ancestors. "Report, Commander Emma," James ordered, his weathered face reflecting the blue glow of his ship's instruments. Emma, a woman born in the dark between stars, checked her displays carefully. "Our scout teams have successfully entered 17 border systems. The aliens still do not know we survived. They think we are extinct." James nodded slowly. Patience had been humanity's greatest lesson during the long exile. They had watched from the darkness, learning about their enemies, studying their weaknesses and planning their return. "Any news from our infiltration teams?" James asked. "Team 7 just finished their work in the archive system. They left our calling card for the aliens to find. Team 12 completed their mission on the Crystal World. Those archives now contain proof that we existed." A cold smile crossed James's face. Let the aliens wonder. Let them fear. Humanity had learned much about justice during their time in exile. Meanwhile, on the mining world of Rocky 7, Supervisor Bill was having the worst day of his career. He had arrived at work to find the entire mining complex empty. 3,000 workers and their families had simply vanished during the night. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just empty buildings and equipment left running. The only clue was burned into the metal wall of the communication center. The words were scorched deep into the steel, "We remember the betrayal." Similar incidents were happening across the frontier. Whole outposts disappeared overnight. Space stations went silent without sending distress calls. Each time the same message appeared, burned into metal with technology that no one could identify. In the Galactic Council chambers, panic was spreading like wildfire. Council leader David called for calm, but his words could not stop the fear growing in every representative's mind. "They are not extinct," whispered Council member Lisa, her hands shaking as she spoke. "The humans are still alive out there somewhere." Intelligence Director Mark, known for his cold logic, activated a holographic star map. Red dots marked each disappearance, each mysterious message. "The pattern is clear," he announced. "They are testing our defenses, studying our reactions. This is preparation for something bigger." "Preparation for what?" demanded David. "For war," Mark replied grimly. "They are coming back and they are not happy about what we did to them." At the galaxy's edge, monitoring stations had begun detecting massive energy signatures moving through deep space. The readings showed something huge approaching from the direction of the neighboring galaxy. Whatever was coming was using technology that did not match any known civilization. Station Chief Robert stared at his instruments in disbelief. "How many ships are we looking at?" His assistant Sarah checked the readings 3 times before answering. "At least 10,000, sir. Possibly more. They are still too far away to get accurate counts." 10,000 ships? Robert felt his blood turn cold. That is not an exploration fleet. That is an invasion force. The news spread quickly through military channels. Ancient defense treaties were activated for the first time in centuries. Species that had been enemies began working together, united by fear of the approaching human fleet. But the humans were not just coming with ships and weapons. On dozens of worlds, strange things began happening. Corrupt officials found their secret communications leaked to the public. Crime bosses discovered their operations exposed to law enforcement. Government archives that had hidden evidence of the human erasure began broadcasting their contents across planetary networks. Governor Helen of the Trade World Merchant 5 watched in horror as her private messages appeared on every screen in the city. The messages showed her involvement in covering up evidence of human civilization, hiding artifacts, and silencing anyone who asked uncomfortable questions. "How did they get these files?" she screamed at her security chief. "We do not know, ma'am. Our systems show no signs of intrusion. It is like the information just appeared." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. The humans were not just returning with military force, they were exposing the truth about their erasure and the conspiracy that had made it possible. Deep in the monitoring stations, technicians watched the approaching energy signatures grow stronger each day. The fleet was massive beyond anything they had ever seen, but it was moving with careful precision, not the wild charge of barbarians seeking revenge. "They are not rushing," observed Chief Robert. "They are taking their time, making sure we see them coming. They want us to be afraid." His assistant Sarah nodded nervously. "It is working. Half the frontier worlds are calling for evacuation." As reports flooded in from across the galaxy, one thing became clear. The humans had spent their 3 centuries of exile learning and preparing. They knew their enemies' weaknesses better than the aliens knew them themselves. The whispers in the dark had become a roar, and that roar carried a message that chilled the galaxy to its core. Humanity remembered everything, and they were coming home with fire in their hearts and justice on their minds. The Great Reckoning was finally at hand. The first human ship to enter galactic space in 300 years was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The vessel moved through space with smooth grace, its design unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. Where alien ships were blocky and crude, this one flowed like water through the stars. Captain Michael sat in his command chair, watching the view screen show the first stars of home. His daughter Lieutenant Kate worked at the communication station beside him. She had been born during the long journey between galaxies and had never seen these stars before. "Multiple alien fleets are moving toward us," Kate reported, her voice steady despite the historic moment. "They want to talk." "Of course they do," Michael replied with a bitter smile. "Open a channel on the emergency frequency." The message that followed would be remembered across the galaxy forever. Captain Michael's calm voice carried to every alien ship and station within range. "This is Captain Michael of the human vessel Phoenix. We are the children of those you erased from history. You thought we were dead, but we survived. We have returned to take back what was stolen from us. We do not come as destroyers, but we will have justice." The response was immediate chaos. Alien fleets scrambled in every direction, defense systems activated across dozens of worlds, and the Galactic Council called emergency meetings. But before anyone could organize a proper response, they learned the true size of humanity's return. The main human fleet emerged from dark space like a wave of vengeance. Admiral James stood on the bridge of his flagship Defiance, a massive warship that dwarfed anything the aliens had built. Behind him stretched 10,000 ships of designs the galaxy had never imagined. "Admiral," reported his officer Lieutenant David, "all ships report ready for action. The alien response fleets are scattered and confused." James nodded with satisfaction. During their exile, humans had studied every battle the galaxy had fought. They knew their enemies' tactics, their strengths, and most importantly, their weaknesses. "Open a direct channel to the Galactic Council," James ordered. When the connection was established, James found himself looking at 43 alien faces, all showing fear, anger, and confusion. "I am Admiral James of the United Human Fleet," he announced. "We have returned to settle old debts. You erased us from history because we were becoming too successful, too adaptable. You feared what we might become. Now you will learn what we have become." Council leader David, struggling to keep his composure, leaned forward. "Admiral James, surely we can find a peaceful solution. Peaceful?" James's voice turned ice cold. "You planned our complete destruction. You worked together to erase not just our people, but every memory of us from the galaxy. Tell me, Council leader David, do you even remember signing the order?" The silence that followed was deafening. David's old face showed something that might have been shame or terror. "We know everything," James continued. "We know which species joined the conspiracy. We know which ones watched and did nothing. And we know which few tried to help us." His expression softened slightly. "To those few we offer friendship. To the rest we offer justice." The human fleet began moving deeper into galactic space, but not with the wild charge of raiders. They moved with the careful precision of a force that had spent 3 centuries preparing for this exact moment. They advanced like controlled fire through the galaxy, burning away lies and corruption but leaving room for new growth. On the frontier worlds, human landing teams appeared offering protection to alien colonists who had lived in fear of pirates and corrupt officials. On the core worlds, human agents began exposing the networks of lies and bribery that had made the erasure possible. The first major engagement came at Border Station Alpha, where a combined alien fleet tried to stop the human advance. What should have been an even fight became a lesson in human innovation. Commander Sarah led a small human task force against 3 times their number of alien ships. The aliens expected a traditional space battle with massive formations and overwhelming firepower. Instead, the humans scattered into small groups, using advanced stealth technology developed during their exile. Enemy ships are trying to form their standard battle line, reported her tactical officer. They have not learned anything new in 300 years. Sarah smiled grimly. Then let us teach them. The human ships struck from multiple directions at once, targeting the aliens' command vessels and disrupting their communications. But the real surprise came when human boarding parties, launched hours before the battle in invisible pods, seized control of alien ships from within. Within 4 hours, the human force had captured the entire alien fleet with minimal losses. The victory sent shockwaves across the galaxy, but it was only the beginning. News of human military success was matched by revelations about the conspiracy that had erased them. On every world the humans liberated, they released archived communications showing the truth about the erasure. Messages between council members discussing the human problem. Plans for systematic memory wipes. Brutal assessments of human potential that had led to the decision to eliminate them rather than compete with them. But perhaps most shocking were the recordings of human attempts at peace. Diplomatic messages that had been ignored. Offers of cooperation that had been dismissed as threats. Evidence that humans had tried to find peaceful solutions right up until their forced exodus. Captain Michael, now commanding liberation forces in the outer systems, stood before a crowd of mixed alien civilians on the recently freed world of New Hope. Behind him, human soldiers worked alongside alien volunteers to distribute food and medical supplies. "We do not seek revenge against innocent people," Michael announced to the crowd. "Our fight is with those who lied to you, not with those who were lied to. We offer you what we were denied, a choice. Help us build something better or simply live free from the corruption that has poisoned this galaxy." The response was overwhelming. Across the galaxy, alien worlds began rising up against their corrupt leaders, inspired by human broadcasts that exposed centuries of lies. The humans had given them something more powerful than weapons. They had given them hope and truth. The Battle of Crystal Station would be remembered as the day the galaxy learned why humans had been feared enough to erase. Admiral Susan commanded 50 human ships against 300 alien vessels. The number should have meant certain death for the humans, but humanity had learned to make the impossible possible. "Enemy fleet forming their old battle pattern," reported Commander Tom from his tactical station. "They plan to surround us and use superior numbers to win." Susan smiled coldly. The aliens still fought the same way they had 3 centuries ago. Massive formations, overwhelming firepower, victory through sheer numbers. They had not learned to adapt like humanity had during the long exile. "Launch Ghost Squadron," Susan ordered. What happened next broke every rule of space warfare the galaxy knew. The human ships split apart into tiny groups, using stealth technology perfected in the darkness between stars. They attacked the alien formation from 6 different directions at once, targeting command ships and jamming communications. But the real surprise was humanity's new strategy. While the aliens focused on the human fleet, they missed the real danger. Human boarding teams had been launched in invisible pods hours before the battle started. These teams seized control of alien ships from the inside, turning the enemy's own weapons against their friends. Within 6 hours, the human force had captured or destroyed the entire alien fleet while losing only 3 ships. The victory sent terror through every alien government, but it was only the beginning of humanity's reckoning. In the council chambers, panic had replaced the usual calm discussions. Intelligence Chief Mark stood before a holographic map showing human forces advancing on dozens of fronts. "They are not just winning battles," he reported with fear in his voice. "They are exposing all our secrets. Every world they capture, every station they take, they release more evidence about the erasure." The proof was devastating. Recorded conversations between council members planning the human solution. Documents showing how they had convinced other species that humans were dangerous. Military reports describing how to completely wipe out human civilization and memory. Most shocking were the files showing human attempts at peace. Diplomatic messages offering friendship that had been deleted without reading. Scientific discoveries humans had tried to share that were dismissed as tricks. Evidence that humans had desperately tried to find peaceful solutions even as the conspiracy closed around them. Captain Robert, now commanding liberation forces in the Middle Systems, stood before a crowd of alien civilians on the newly freed world of Green Valley. Behind him, human soldiers worked side by side with alien volunteers to repair damaged buildings and distribute supplies. "We do not want revenge against innocent people," Robert told the crowd. "We know many of you were lied to about us. We offer you the choice we never had. Join us in building something fair and honest, or simply live free from the corruption that has ruled this galaxy for too long." The response was incredible. Across the galaxy, alien populations were rising against their corrupt leaders. The humans had given them more than just military victory, they had given them the truth and the hope for something better. But not everyone welcomed the human return. The old power structures fought back with desperation and violence. On the industrial world of Iron 3, corrupt Governor Helen ordered her security forces to execute anyone caught helping the humans. The response was swift and merciless. A human special forces team led by Major David infiltrated the planet during the night. By morning, Helen and her corrupt officials were under arrest, and their crimes were being broadcast to every screen on the planet. "How did they get past our defenses?" Helen screamed as human soldiers led her away. "They did not come through your defenses," Major David replied calmly. "They came through your people. Half your security force was already working for us." This became the pattern across the galaxy. Humans did not just rely on superior technology and tactics. They turned the aliens' own people against corrupt leaders by exposing the truth and offering hope for change. The final piece of the conspiracy was revealed when human hackers broke into the deepest archives of the Council. The files they found showed the real reason for the human erasure. It was not just fear of human military power or technology. It was fear of human ideas. Dr. Elizabeth, the human fleet's chief historian, presented the evidence to the galaxy through emergency broadcasts. "They were not afraid of our ships or our weapons," she announced. "They were afraid of our belief that all species should be treated equally. They were afraid of our idea that cooperation was better than domination." The files showed that human colonies had been the most successful mixed-species settlements in the galaxy. Human-led research teams had made breakthrough discoveries by combining different species' strengths. Human diplomats had been solving conflicts that had lasted for centuries. The old power structure had seen this success and realized their system of control was doomed. Rather than adapt, they had chosen to destroy the source of change. Admiral James, leading the main fleet toward the galactic core, received surrender offers from 15 different species. They were willing to turn over their corrupt leaders in exchange for mercy. "Accept all legitimate surrenders," James ordered his staff. "But verify everything. 3 centuries of patience have taught us to trust carefully." The fire of human return was burning across the galaxy, but it was a cleansing fire. It burned away the lies and corruption while leaving space for new growth. Species that had been enemies for millennia were working together. Worlds that had known only oppression were tasting freedom. The reckoning was far from over, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Humanity had returned not as conquerors but as liberators. They had learned that true strength came not from domination, but from lifting others up and building something better together. 5 years after humanity's return, the galaxy looked completely different. The massive meeting hall that once housed the corrupt Galactic Council now served as home for the new Galactic Assembly. Representatives from over 60 species gathered here to build a better future together. Admiral James, now called Mediator instead of a military commander, stood at the speaking platform addressing the assembly. Gray hair showed at his temples and lines of responsibility marked his face, but his eyes still burned with the same determination that had carried humanity through 3 centuries of exile. "Today marks 5 years since we returned home," he announced, his voice reaching every corner of the Great Hall. 5 years ago we came back with anger in our hearts and justice on our minds. Today we stand not as conquerors, but as partners building something better than what came before." In the audience, species that had once been enemies now worked side by side. The Crystal people shared their technology with the warrior clans from the outer worlds. The water-breathing deep dwellers had formed research partnerships with the flying storm riders. Humanity had become the bridge that connected them all. Captain Robert, now bearing the title of ambassador, stood to give his report on the frontier colonies. The New Worlds Project has created 47 mixed-species colonies this year alone. Humans, crystal people, tree dwellers, and dozens of other species are working together to build new homes from nothing. The change had not been easy. Some members of the old power structure still fought against the new system, launching attacks and trying to restart old conflicts. But they found little support among populations that had experienced freedom and cooperation under the new way. Admiral Emma, once a young commander and now head of the peacekeeping forces, reported on security matters. Crime in the outer systems is down 70%. Corruption complaints have dropped to the lowest levels in recorded history. Our mixed-species crews are performing better than single-species units ever did. The combination of human strategic thinking with alien technology and cultural knowledge had created something the galaxy had never seen before. A truly unified civilization where differences were celebrated as strengths rather than feared as threats. But perhaps the most important change was in the historical records. Where humanity had once been systematically erased, now their story was being carefully rebuilt. More importantly, the complete records of the erasure conspiracy had been made public, ensuring such betrayal could never happen again. Dr. Mary, the chief historian of the new archives, stood to present her latest findings. We have now recovered about 80% of pre-exile human history. But more importantly, we have created new systems that make the erasure of any species impossible. All historical records are now stored in multiple independent networks with safeguards that prevent any single authority from making deletions. As the assembly session ended, James walked through the memorial gardens surrounding the building. Monuments here honored not just the humans who had died during exile, but all victims of the old system's corruption and cruelty. The main monument bore the words that had once been carved in ruins across the galaxy: "We were here. We will return. Remember the fire." But new words had been added below: "We returned. We remembered. We forgave. We built something better." Captain Kate, now commanding her own exploration ship, joined him in the garden. "Father says you are thinking about retirement," she said, using the term of respect rather than indicating family relationship. James smiled, watching alien children play alongside human ones on the garden paths. Species that had been taught to hate each other were now raising their young together in peace. "Not retirement," he replied. "Transition. The galaxy no longer needs warriors. It needs builders, teachers, gardeners who can help new things grow." "And what will you build?" James gestured toward the scene before them. Children of different species playing together, learning cooperation instead of conflict. A galaxy where diversity was seen as valuable rather than dangerous. "A future," he said simply. "One where no species will ever be erased again. One where the fire that brought us back becomes the light that guides everyone forward." The transformation was visible everywhere. On the trade world of Merchant 5, former Governor Helen now worked in a factory alongside the alien workers she had once oppressed. The experience had changed her, teaching her the value of honest work and fair treatment. On the mining world Rocky 7, where workers had once disappeared mysteriously, humans and aliens now worked together in the deepest mines. The operations were safer and more productive than ever before, proving that cooperation truly was better than fear. In the outer frontier, mixed crews explored new worlds and made first contact with previously unknown species. The lessons learned from humanity's own tragic first contact had created new protocols ensuring that no species would ever again face erasure or oppression. The monitoring stations at the galaxy's edge, once watching for threats, now served as welcome centers for travelers and refugees. The darkness between galaxies no longer held terrors, but possibilities for growth and exploration. As night fell over the capital world, the stars above told a story of hope rather than fear. They spoke of unity instead of division, of cooperation instead of conflict. Humanity had returned from the dark void not to conquer their former home, but to help it remember what it could become when all species worked together. The fire that had forged humanity in exile had become the flame that lit a path toward a better future for everyone. The galaxy had learned that true strength came not from erasing those who were different, but from celebrating and learning from those differences. The great work of building a just and peaceful galaxy had only just begun, but the foundation was strong, forged in the flames of hardship and tempered by the wisdom of those who had survived the impossible and returned home with hope instead of hatred.